Lucy Lowe was 14 when she gave birth to the child of the man who would kill her. Azhar Ali Mahmood set fire to her house and was jailed for triple murder. Lucy's sister and mother were also killed in the blaze. Louise was also friends with Becky Watson. She was killed when a driver sped off while she was on the bonnet of his car. Becky's mother would only later find out that her daughter had been groomed for sex from the age of 11.
There are as many euphemisms, it seems, in the world as there are people with a guilty conscience, and what is referred to as the grooming scandal in the UK has many euphemisms and very little accuracy, of course, in the mainstream media reporting. That either comes from a desire to have it keep happening or a guilty conscience about the circumstances that have resulted in, estimates are, hundreds of thousands of young, white, Christian girls being targeted, groomed, exploited, drugged, raped, tortured, and murdered and handed around as sex slaves and so on. The perpetrators are overwhelmingly Muslim, and the perpetrators are overwhelmingly from places like Pakistan, Bangladesh. The victims are significantly white Christian girls. I grew up in neighborhoods not dissimilar from some of the neighborhoods that are being targeted for these white girls. And I wonder so many things about this whole question, and it is such a fatal stab into the heart of England and of British culture, a culture that fails to protect its children, that enables in many ways and almost encourages, through turning a blind eye to this kind of predation, a culture that fails to protect its children from being destroyed physically, emotionally, and sometimes even in terms of their life, that fails to protect its children from being raped to the point of becoming infertile. And of course, if you are exposed to that kind of evil, that kind of predation as a child, what is your relationship to your society? What is your relationship to growing up, to having a boyfriend, to getting engaged, to getting married, to having children? It is a way of preventing the reproduction of your victims to attack and assault them in this kind of manner. This kind of predation is not about sex. It's about power. It's about dominance. It's about control. And given the scale and demographics, in my view, is easily viewable as an act of war.
Telford. A better place to live and work. The success story continues.
Really talk in a relaxed way about race. We can't relax into the conversation. We can't say what we really think, adding codicils and caveats and all the rest, because it is just so sensitive. So this woman writes something which a lot of people would say is a statement of the bleeding obvious, and ends up losing a job. What do you think?
Well, she took out the codicils and caveats, as you put it, and she said that the Sun had stripped out the nuances, but she'd approved the piece. Her office had said she'd been thrilled with it, and then she ran away from it. That's why she had to go. She wasn't straight. And look, we discuss race all the time. I always find it quite funny. It's funny in a very grim way when people say you can't discuss it. It is discussed all the time. But she said, we've got a problem with Pakistani men. No, you have a problem with some Pakistani men. And these
It's all about money. And sex. And music. Sometimes.
Dirty black, ball kids, street smacker, smack, manager, boy lighter, lag, want a record deal, get hyper, better pull sad man's back, fucking hell, corrupted, BBC, corrupted, David Cameron, corrupted, your party, disrupted.
Yeah, and these street grooming gangs who've been mainly Pakistani, some Pakistani men, and these street grooming gangs who've been mainly Pakistani recently. Got to remember, most people who abuse children and are on the sex offenders register, the vast majority are white British men. And you've got to keep the context. You've got to keep the context. Kevin, I saw your face move there. You've got to keep the context.
Get it done, pay me now, fucking cunt. It's been 3 years, I'll be waiting now. Getting a call, fuck about. Radio 1, the media. Little kids, paedophilia. Jimmy Savile. The party's now. It's me in the court again. Can't talk Mackenzie friend. News of the world, phone hack. Compost settlement payback. And what you saying, Prime Minister? Why were your friends so sinister? You wait, I'm gonna finish ya. You fucking... All the press like to fester. They give me joke like Jester. Don't try and test me, I'll test ya. Anywhere I go, I'm at the press go. All the press like to fester.
This is a map of rape crisis centres in England and Wales. This is a map of Muslim immigration into the United Kingdom. This is uncanny, especially if you look at, say, Kent or Bristol or in Devon. There is a rape crisis centre almost exactly on each area.
Pick up something he said and throw it to you. He's saying that actually she took too selective a view of this problem, that we need to see it, as you say, in the context and in the round. But actually, isn't it fair to say that there is a phenomenon, and particularly in northern towns, where gangs of Asian guys are coming together to groom and rape white girls? So that's a phenomenon.
And I would be more specific than Asian gangs. I would say Pakistani. Pakistani gangs, because the J report was very clear. 1,400 girls in her constituency had been abused over a number of years. As the constituency MP, she raised this issue. She was very brave about it. And there had been, as you said earlier, a culture of covering up social service abuse. We can't get involved in this because it will cause racial problems. We don't want to cause any lack of social cohesion.
Information from a voicemail. To-do list, get it done, pay me now, fucking cunt. It's been 3 years, I'll be waiting now. Getting a call, fuck about. Radio 1, the media. Little kids, paedophilia. Jimmy Savile. The party's now.
I work for a film company called Climax Films.
Edwina Hero, it's not her gas. Fucking liar, Andrew Ash. Ian Puddick, Bill Baloney, David Icke, your film's a pony. Pie and Mash, Liquidation, Child Abuse, Secret Agent, Cyril Smith, Sidney Cook, Simon Denchel, write a book.
We've got approximately 90 to 100 victims. I think we're just scratching the surface.
It's quite horrendous, really, what she's actually coming out with. Just being raped constantly for between 10 and 13 hours.
Then he pushed me onto the bed and lay next to me. I just stopped saying anything at that point. I just lay there.
I didn't rape her.
What did you do with her then?
I didn't rape.
What did you do with her?
Yeah, I didn't do nothing with her. Yeah, I don't even know it, yeah.
It's so easy to manipulate the mind of a child, and that's what they are, they're children.
We've got to prove our case beyond reasonable doubt. The defence only have to provide a doubt.
Last week, a major trial in the Old Bailey ended with the conviction of a gang of men for grooming and sexually exploiting girls as young as 11 in Oxford. This is just the latest of a series of sex gangs cases that have come to court. But 3 years ago, before any of these cases came to light, police in Telford allowed cameras to follow one of the biggest child sex trafficking investigations the UK has ever seen. DCI Alan Edwards is leading the investigation.
The intelligence is absolutely compelling that something's going on. One girl in particular is talking about these two men, Max and Eddie, picking her up, taking her away, taking her around to see different men. What I wanted to ensure was that I could concentrate on them, see what they were up to, see who they were associating with, and from there find out how many other victims I might have.
Can you talk me through the profile of the offenders?
The offenders in the main that we're going for were the facilitators, and the facilitators were actually young Pakistani men. And the difficulty is, how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with it without being accused of being racist in some way?
Always buy them bottles of Bacardi, get them to neck it so they were that drunk. I go and then sit next to her, and with that she completely breaks down. She's absolutely sobbing, completely hysterical, to the point when I start crying as well, because it was just horrible. She then just starts going on and on about the time she's been raped, and quite violently as well, and she goes into detail. She remembers being given alcohol and then passing out. She then wakes up on a bed where she's the wrong end of the bed and her head's sort of falling off the end, and she's been raped by two of them, but she feels like she's been drugged because she cannot move her body to get them off. But while she's being raped, there's another room that's locked with a number of girls inside and a number of men, and she can hear the girls screaming and crying that are quite clearly being raped in that room.
We've got children dying, children missing, being raped by their thousands in every single town and city, and you're silent.
It is an issue, and it's an issue about how those young men think of women, women of their own ethnicity who tend to be off limits, and then what they do about vulnerable white girls. And there's no point pretending this is not a problem, because it is. I keep saying this is not to suggest for a second that it's only in the Pakistani heritage community this kind of thing takes place. That's untrue. Disproportionately, sex offenders are white, but we gain nothing if we don't actually talk about this aspect.
Then dismayed when the Labour Rotherham MP Sarah Champion found herself criticised for making that link by the Labour Party.
Oh, I don't think. Hopefully, I can't. I mean, I certainly gave every support to Sarah when she was criticised, because she was right.
Because she said British Pakistani men are raping and exploiting white girls, and it's time we faced up to it.
No, it's true, and she was absolutely right.
Are politicians not facing up to it? Is it too difficult to have this conversation, Lucy?
It is quite clearly about social and cultural attitudes towards white working class girls. There is absolutely no doubt about that, and we cannot bury our heads in the sand. We do have to accept that. And if the local police chief says, yes, child abuse happens with white males, yes, of course it does, but let's not conflate child abuse with child exploitation, grooming, gang type behaviour, because that is different and that is perpetrated by Pakistani groups. Let's not conflate child abuse with child exploitation, grooming, gang type behaviour, because that is different and that is perpetrated by Pakistani groups.
They come to invest, live, grow, work, play, meet and prosper. They come to a place where business and good living are joined. They come to Telford.
Evening, I'm Steve Eager. First on Fox 4 News at 5:30 tonight. 6 people have filed a civil lawsuit saying when they were children, they were sexually abused by church elders within local Jehovah's Witness Kingdom halls.
Members of the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania, over the course of 70 years, sexually abused more than 1,000 individuals, nearly all of them young children. The church helped to cover up this criminal behavior with a playbook that helped individual churches keep these dirty secrets while violators were just handed off.
One of the biggest reasons that we're not addressing this issue head on.
Certainly, Natasha, certainly. And what happens is the victim gets further victimized. And nobody wants to talk about it. And incest, for instance, you know, people don't believe in India that incest exists. So if it does happen, people are just turning a blind eye to it. And I will cite, a friend of mine is a lawyer who works with women's rights, and she once told me of this case where this woman was thrown out, this woman was working and she came home and she has 3 daughters, and she found that her husband was abusing the daughters, and she threw him out of the house that very day. When the neighbours came up to her and told her, listen, don't let this spread, take him in, it doesn't matter.
We won't know the full story. I don't think we'll ever truly know.
Tasnim Lowe has no memories of her mom. She was just 16 months old when her 16-year-old mother Lucy was killed in a fire at their family home. A fire started by Tasnim's father, 26-year-old Azhar Ali Mahmood.
I can't understand. That's what gets me. Can't. Never did anybody any harm.
Mahmood was given 3 life sentences for the murders of Lucy, Sarah and Linda Lowe, but he never faced charges in connection with his sexual relations with a minor. Tasnim now wants this issue investigated before the killer is eligible for release from prison.
If he does get out, if he does get the parole, he's not just a risk to me and my family or to the past victims, but other people, so many other people, because he won't be on the offenders list. So.
Today, an anonymous woman from Telford has spoken to the Sunday Mirror, alleging that she too was sexually abused as a child by Mahmood.
Still angry, angry towards him, angry towards the other people that are involved in this, and hopefully their names will come out and they'll be brought to justice. Maybe if the police charging him for having sex with a minor, why didn't that happen? It's all maybes, And if that had have happened, he'd have been arrested for having sex with a minor. Maybe, it's only a maybe, the fire might never have happened.
Hoping for a new investigation into the relationship Tasnim's father had with her mother and other alleged victims, the family have meetings scheduled this week with the local authority and police force. In a statement today, West Mercia Police say that this case never reached court due to a lack of evidence. The force adds that in recent years their knowledge of and approach to dealing with child sexual exploitation is much improved, and that they can assure any victims who come forward now they can expect a thorough investigation. Emma Thomas, BBC Midlands Today, Shropshire.
Back in 2008, the Home Office sent a circular to all police forces in the country saying, as far as these young girls who are being exploited in towns and cities, we believe that they've made an informed choice about their sexual behaviour, and therefore it's not for you police officers to get involved in. If that's the landscape coming from the top down in 2008, rest assured all agencies are going to listen to it. It only changed because of the work that we did and the work that the Times newspaper did in 2010-11. The fact that we were able to bring the prosecution in Rochdale led to this investigation in West Yorkshire opening. It only opened in 2013. And the series of prosecutions that have followed indicate to me that the agencies are getting it right now. But the reality, of course, is that we've lost a generation of young girls who've been left behind and abused.
And looking back at the Alexis J. report into Rochdale, staff describing nervousness about identifying the ethnic origins of perpetrators for fear of being thought racist.
He started violently raping me. He'd beat me with his belt and things if I didn't agree to let him rape me. And then he'd try and make me feel better, or make himself feel better, I guess, by trying to give me money or top up my phone and things again. From that man, it moved on to many men. There's about 7 abusers in the end.
So you were passed around, or they would all turn up en masse, or what?
No, it would be almost whoever caught me first, whoever saw me walking home from school first, or walking to my friend's house. Telford's a very small area, so there's nowhere to hide. Like, if somebody knows where you live and your daily routine, they're going to find you. But it quickly moved on to being sold onto men every single day. So I'd be being sold maybe 2 or 3 times a night. Taken into the only thing I can describe as a rape house, which was set up for the purpose of young girls being sold to men. The reason why I kept going back was they were threatening me with burning my house down which was a real threat in Telford because that had actually happened previously. And they would say to me they would rape my mum and rape my sisters. And they knew all about my family. Yeah, there was just no escape at all. I was gang raped just after I turned 16, and that was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me. Sorry.
You don't need to apologise. No way.
And after that, I tried to commit suicide, and people would say to me, "Was that a cry for help?" And I would say no. I genuinely wanted to die because I thought that was the only way, the way out. I was in cars that were stopped and searched by the police with older men, and I was never questioned why I was in there or who I was. My name was never asked. And I just think if they'd been more proactive at points like that, things could have changed earlier. I was also going to the doctor in the youth sexual health clinic a couple of times a week for at least about 3 years, getting the morning after pill.
Wow. How many times do you think you took the morning after pill in 3 years?
I couldn't even estimate how many times.
What, dozens? Hundreds? You were going twice a week for it?
Twice a week.
Over 3 years?
Yeah.
And no one there raised the alarm?
Nope. Nothing.
But did they ask you why you kept coming back?
No. Nobody asked any questions, and I had 2 abortions. And also, again, no questions were asked as to what was going on in my life.
So, why would you give it there? So, guys, you've all heard in the news in the last 24 hours that reports come out about Telford, the grooming gangs, and probably the worst case in Britain. This is not actually frigging right, because every city across the UK, this kind of thing is happening on an industrial scale. These are not just sexual grooming gangs. These are rape gangs, raping young people, young as 10, 11-year-olds, and destroying their lives. Telford is not the only town or the city where it's happening. You just have to Google any town: Bradford, Leeds, Aylesbury, Oxford, Bristol, Newcastle, and you're getting the same formula, that lover boy formula, providing people with gifts, providing them with drink and drugs, and then drugging them and then raping them on an industrial scale. Girls young as 11, 10-year-olds. Makes me sick to the core when I hear these things. But girls young as 10, 11, passed on to people, town to town, raped by 5 to 10 people a day. And you know what? The rape gangs went out and done it. But the government, the council, the police aided and abetted them. By remaining silent on this issue, they were actually on the side of the perpetrators. And still to this date, nobody really wants to tackle the core of the problem. Everybody's too scared. Everybody's too PC, politically correct. Everybody wants to appease. In the last 40 years, it's appeasement. And appeasement in my books is cowardice. We have people in high positions who could make changes overnight that would have an impact across the UK, but there are too much of cowards. These people will say the right words because it's in the press now. And they'll be saying them for the next 2-3 days. And once it's out the press, once the news is gone, out of mind, out of sight, out of mind, and they haven't done anything about it. Things that were put in place after the Rotherham ain't working. It ain't working because we're not tackling the real cause. We can't even say, without being accused of racism or Islamophobia, We can't even say who these perpetrators are. But if we can't say who they are, how can we tackle these visible people, you know, these invisible people? We've got to make them visible so we can tackle this problem. It's sickening, and I would love to swear, because there are words here that I would love to use, but which I won't. I won't belittle myself, but it hurts me. It hurts me for reasons. For the last 20 years, we've been saying these things to police forces up and down the country. And all they've been saying is bring proof, bring proof, bring proof. And we now know they've been sitting on proofs. Rotherham was sitting on proof. Telford was sitting on proof. And it's extremely sickening in the case of Telford, when these perpetrators, these gangs, these rape gangs, were given 20-year sentences, and one of them's already out after 5, and he's probably, you know, sitting in the sun somewhere outside, having no remorse of what he's done. The system needs an overall change, and it needs people who are abused to be making the decisions. It needs people who are abused where the decisions are made. These people, the abused people, need to be sitting on their meetings. Not just any kid, young kid who's come out of university with a degree making decisions. We need to use the experience of all these abused people and people who deal with abuse on a daily basis to make the right decision for these kids. It's sickening. I don't want to say much more because my blood is boiling. Be aware, be prepared, and stay safe. Waheguru Ji ka Khalsa.
We're going to go into the failings of the services that were supposed to be there to protect you and your family. Yep. But for the purposes of the camera, can we just show the camera the amount of factual evidence that you have to back up everything you're about to say? Yep. Show them this file that you've got. Can you just lift that up and show them the file? So it's got paperwork after paperwork, and this is going back from the beginning.
From the beginning, right through to the day of 2019.
When did you first realise that there was something going on with Amy?
There was something going on in... Her mum brought me to a light of it, obviously, because I was at work in the daytime and everything else, and I worked away from home quite a lot until, obviously, Amy was... until roughly around 2010, 2011. It became then an issue. It come to light to myself, but there was something just not quite right. From that,
when you say not right, what do you mean by that? Was it that she changing her attitudes were changing?
She was hiding away quite a lot upstairs, coming in from school and obviously going upstairs. She was coming home with different, like a new scarf. She come home with like rings, perfume, different items, and you'd say, where did you get them from? Oh, they're my friends. My friends given me in school. Yeah. So obviously then it became, I started to monitor a little bit where she was going, who she was seeing, and it just happened to be this one day she said she was going to a friend's house, Chloe's house, and I said, I'll drop you off because I'm going past there that day. I turned up to drop her off. She was obviously accompanying me. We drove round to the house, dropped her off. Her mum was with me at the time. We dropped her off. She was banging the door and I went down the road and I turned around and I come back up the road and she was walking away from the address. So I said to her, I said, where are you going? She said, oh, well, she's not in, so I'm going to be walking home. I said to her, I said, well, I'll take you home. There's no problem. You can come with us to continue where we were going that day, and then obviously she'd be going home with us. Yeah. She got in the car, but there was quite a big stink. Well, the attitude and argumentative over petty things. Yeah. We then continued and she went home. That night she was hid away more so, and she would go to school as normal. And then people in the community were saying to me, I've seen your daughter. I've seen your daughter here. I've seen your daughter there. I've seen her in trenches.
School hours?
In school hours.
Okay, yeah.
So I now question her mom, and her mom is saying, well, she's in school as far as she knew. So we contacted the school, and as far as the school register was concerned, she was in school. The register was saying she was there. Then, obviously, it's gone on, and she's still cutting herself off from the rest of the household, her siblings, her brother, her sister.
It wasn't like that before?
It was nothing like that before. Okay. She was always a bubbly person, always interacting with everybody, always sat round the table with us, have a general conversation. That had changed. Okay. Something wasn't quite right.
What did the school say when you contacted the school?
So when I contacted the school said she was in. As far as the register was concerned, she was in, but there has been a few occasions where she's had to be sent home because, obviously, ladies' problems.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And she got sent home. Well, that was marked on the register. Well, she never appeared home on them days until school time of coming home, because there was something didn't seem quite right. Her mom had overheard her talking on a telephone early hours of the morning. Her mom had intervened the telephone to ask her who she's on the phone to, and she said nobody. And things then, my mind started to go. So it became to the point when she disappeared. So obviously now we started to ask people, had anybody seen her, social media, contacted the police. The police said they couldn't do nothing because she wasn't missing for 24 hours. So it became then an issue of ours, a family issue. So we're searching everywhere for her. Then somebody said to us, but she was seen at a block of flats in Donington, in Barn Close, which then I got my brother, myself, and we drove up Barn Close. I drove all around Donington at the time, and I couldn't see her nowhere. I went up to these flats and I've looked around and I couldn't see her, but her sister had put across the social media, had anybody seen Amy? It became then, we found her, I found her. By driving around in the car, she was in a block of flats being pulled up the stairs by an Asian or Ghanaian gentleman pulling up the stairs. I then banged the door to get into the flats, pushed every buzzer, nobody had let me in. Eventually a lady in the bottom floor flat, she let me into the flats. I went up the stairwell, looking for her, shouting her, and she was in a flat on the top floor. Banged all the doors on the top floor at the time, but nobody was answering. Then this door opened, number 49. Her mum went into the flat. She was there in hysterics. She was just crying, screaming her head off, bawling her eyes out. I entered the flat where the Ghanaian guy eventually answered the door. I recognised this person from the stairwell, still got the same hat on. I searched his flat and everything for any belongings of him and called the police. The police come. The police come. In the meantime, we took my daughter down, put her in the car outside, wait for the police. My brother then took her to Wellington, to the Glade, for sexual examination. It was found she'd had sexual intercourse by a perpetrator. Obviously now this has started to, the process started to go round in my head. From her getting eliminated, she's been sexually assaulted, she got released from Wellington Police Station, sent home.
How old was she at this point?
She was 12. 12, just turned 13, just coming 13. Just turned 13 in the March. She turned 13. This was in the May. She got all analysed, taken. She's gone back home. Then the police come to the house, and the police sat on our settee and called my daughter a full-blown liar. but nothing had gone on. Nothing at all had gone on with the examination. Nothing at all had gone on. She consented.
At 13 years old?
At 13. She consented. I know you can't consent. Consensual age of sex is 16. She was 13 years of age. He sat on a DI now and a DC sat on the settee at the home address.
What's his name?
DI Billy Scott, he called my daughter a liar, and DC Cindy Henry called my daughter a liar. From that, if she was that much of a liar, why was I at an abortion clinic on the 30th of September 2013 where a mum had to stand behind the screen for 4.5 hours while she has an abortion in Southall, Birmingham, to come from there back home, been to the police now start their investigations. In the meantime, you've got the child protection, you've got the Kate, you've got child services, and you've got family intervention. These people have all come into our life, into our house, and they could produce nothing. They couldn't do no more than I'm already doing as a parent. They put her on a behaviour contract which allowed her out 15 minutes a day. I have the evidence to show. And I had to then be monitoring. My job to monitor her. The police CSO got took away from the address because the CSO was taking things too serious and relaying all this information which is presented to the CSO to the police, and the police weren't acting on nothing. I have the family intervention come into my house and they walk away in 2014 and say there's nothing more we can do to help the family. This was 12 months after her abortion. Then I had social services, John Powers, turn round. He never come to the home address.
So the flat that you went to,
yeah,
the man that you saw, complete with your daughter being examined and them saying that she has had sexual intercourse, was that man arrested?
That man was arrested and released with no charge.
Why? If they've got the evidence from analysing her, from looking at her, knowing that she's had that, why did they do that?
Because that man's DNA wasn't the DNA what was found on her.
So there was potentially more than one person.
There was 2 people in the room. One person left, another person coming.
Your daughter was raped. You're going through all this turmoil, and for a phone call, the connection to this family call you or call someone and offer £15,000 for you
to keep the baby, the fetus, to keep the baby, obviously, but it's become a fetus.
So these are all connected. Are these all residents of Telford?
Yes, they
and
are.
Surrounding areas.
Yes, they are.
And how big does this family go?
This family is massive.
It's massive.
It's massive. It goes into Birmingham.
Okay, so how many of these men? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many? Six men. They're all from the same family.
They're all from the same family.
So how many more from this family have been involved in raping your daughter?
There's another 9 from that family.
From that family. This problem that you've experienced, your daughter's experienced, this complete scandal. Those responsible, which you'll think the reason why the police maybe didn't do what they should be doing is because they think if they did that, they'd be classed as racist.
That's right. They'd be classed as racist. It's like, as soon as I spoke out in the police station with Ian Rutherford, DS Ian Rutherford, DS Rob Rondell, if I spoke out with DCI Jennifer Mattison, I was foreseen to be racist because
They label you racist?
They labelled me racist.
Give me
because I turn round and I would say, why are you allowing these Pakistani people to rape my daughter? If it was a white person, he would have been brought to justice.
Like that.
Just like that. Yeah. Because there is evidence out there. I have seen cases which have happened. People have groomed people online, and they have groomed people. White people have groomed young white girls. Yeah. They have been brought to justice straight away. Because it is of the Asian community, it has been discarded. Tried to sweep it under the carpet and think it's all going to go away.
Because it'd be classed as racist.
Because I'm classed as racist.
Okay, let's just. What I want to do is I want to talk. If you can, it's probably going to be difficult for you. But I want the public to understand what these men did to your daughter. So, if you can, without it being too hard, can you describe what had happened? I know you want to say this. From the times of being in that flat and trying to getting your daughter out of that flat and put her in that car that day, what other experiences did your daughter go through the rape? What happened?
Well, she got taken by once it all started to come to light, and obviously my daughter started to speak, and it took me 2 years after she absconded. It took me 2 years to find her. It took me probably 3-4 months to build that relationship up with her again, and that trust issue. When I built the trust, I'd meet her frequently. I'd drive down to London and I'd meet her frequently, and I needed to put my mind at rest. Little parts, you know, of what's actually happened. What extents have they gone to? Where have they took her? What have you seen? What have they threatened you with? So, obviously, then I got speaking to my daughter. They took her to a place where there's a freezer, and there was a body in that freezer of a young girl hanging. And if she spoke out, she'd be next.
What she was taken? So that's massive. I mean, so she was taken to where? She was taken what building was it? What sort of building was this?
It was an old butcher shop.
An old butcher shop. And did they run this?
Their relatives, or they had connections to this old butcher shop. Yeah. And in there was a girl hanging on a hook. She froze in the freezer. She got told if she spoke out about any of this,
about what happened to
her, any experience, and it got spoke out about, she'd be next. So from obviously taken to a freezer, I seen it with my own eyes. They threatened to smash my face in, what they messaged her, which I found that on a smashed mobile phone, which is here.
So this is the evidence that we've got. Right. So this is an evidence bag. Let's just go into this quickly. So this is an evidence bag this was a phone that belonged to who?
My daughter.
So this is a phone that belonged to your daughter, and this was taken by the police.
Yeah.
Because there was you believed, or you don't believe, there was information here that would.
It would incriminate. It would incriminate people because I'd seen people on that phone pleading for mercy on their hands and knees.
For her not to talk.
Not to talk, okay. And they're sorry.
So
for
why
forgiveness?
For the camera, this phone is in 5 or 6 different bits. Why is this phone in 5 or 6 different bits?
Well, it was given to them in fully working order. That phone was.
Yeah.
It became then towards the end of the investigation, and the police said they weren't going no further with nothing. So
did they say they found anything on the phone?
Wait a minute. So I started to ask for exhibits back, our exhibits back. So the exhibits started to come back, no problem. They started coming. I have an exhibit box here, exhibits in it.
These are all different phones?
These are all different phones.
These are your daughter's phones?
No, these were what were passed to her by perpetrators.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
so
these...
we've got... So how many we've got?
You've got...
So these phones were given to her.
Yeah, that phone
by the rapist. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are individual people giving these to her. They weren't the same person. No. So there's six.
FST label. No examination carried out on the handset in the box. I started asking the questions about it. They stopped any exhibits coming back now. There's nothing come back ever since.
So this box says on the side of it, no examination on this handset carried out. So that would mean that this device was never dealt with, never looked at.
No.
So why is it in 5 different bits?
Because I believe the police have smashed it. It's corruption within the police, within the establishment.
So they've made it so that this phone can't be turned on. That's it now.
No, it's damaged. Yeah, and I have liability met from the police for criminal damage to a mobile phone.
So you actually got a prosecution?
I've got liability met, but the
they did this.
West Mercia police smashed that phone.
And also, can we talk about the tape, because I know it's quite important. We've got, you probably can't see it, there's a line of sellotape across here. And from my understanding with these exhibits, tell me if I'm wrong, but once a police officer will open this bag, once they close it, they have to seal it and they have to sign it. Talk about the strip.
This bag, there's a dotted line along here. Right along the very dotted line, it has been slit open and it has been sellotaped back. If you get your torch for your DNA evidence, they've even left a piece of food underneath the tape of their teeth. There is fingerprints in that bag and there's evidence there.
But to them, they're trying to tell you that they had never opened this bag.
They told me that.
They'd never tampered with it.
No.
But it's clear from the rip that's there that you can see it's been opened and sellotape on the back, and the fact it's not been signed.
No.
So it's complete corruption.
Corruption. I've come to a stage where I had to do my own homework, my own intelligence and my own knowledge. So then I built an investigation, an inquiry upon the establishment, but not only the establishment, the perpetrators. Because the perpetrators are working with the establishment. Because I go into a restaurant in Oakengates to collect my money for the work what I've done, and sat there at a table, there's a group of 6 people. Sat at this table, there's 5 of them are perpetrators, 1 of them I don't know. He's got a dodgy left eye and a slick back grey hair. He's wearing a tartan jacket with a white shirt with it open.
You remember it like it was yesterday?
I stood there and I'm looking at him. And I look across at this person. I do. It's like photographic. You photograph him with your head. So one of the perpetrators now, he's noticed I'm waiting. He gets gas and he comes down and he pays me more money for the work I've done. While I was waiting for him to come, I see a big brown envelope pushed across the table. It was cash. You can see the cash was in it. He got slid, put it in the inside of his pocket, sat there, cool, just carried on eating his food, talking with them all, nothing, collecting my money and I left. I walked out of there and I got in the car and my mind's on overdrive. I've recognised this person before. My mind is on overdrive. And I couldn't, at the time I could not fathom it, could not work it out. So I left, carried on going, went home. It was about 2 weeks later, there's a big meeting called Mallinsgate Police Station, 2nd floor. Ian Rutherford, DI Jim Bayliss, which is a new DI what got brought in onto the case, Jennifer Mattison. She apologised, she couldn't make the meeting. There was Cindy Henry, and there was Nicky Gardner. When I walked into the room, the first thing that man did was take as much information off that man before he leaves this room today. I've looked at this man, and this man's gone, and the penny dropped. That's him.
Wow, so this is the guy in the takeaway?
This was the guy what sat at the takeaway, what took a big brown envelope of cash.
So that's where you made the connection? Then
That's where I've made the connection.
And who is he?
DI Jim Bayliss. He is a detective inspector from Worcester.
So he's a police officer?
He's a DI.
He's a DI?
From Worcester. His boss...
And you've basically caught him a few weeks before that, taking a payday of abusers.
Of abusers. I've raised this now in the minutes of all my meetings.
You've got proof of this?
I've got proof of this. Every bit I have, everything I'm saying, I have proof to back everything I say. I raised this now in this meeting. The meeting's cut short. I'm shipped out of the police station. Nobody speaks to me. Nobody takes no information.
Let's put this into perspective for the viewers. So, you've been failed from day one. Of every little bit of information you pass them, they've not used, they've not tried to pursue it. You're now saying, okay, I won't go to the normal Bobby. I'm not going to go to the above the Bobby, the sergeant. I'm going to go to the top man.
Yeah.
I want answers from the top man about what is going on, about the investigations of my daughter's rape by 70 men that were done. And what he does, he just won't talk to you.
He won't speak to me. He fobs me off. And then his own boss, Kevin Purcell, says it's up to him if he wants to speak to me or not.
He's the head of the force.
Well, he's the head of the force, and Tom Harding was the division commander. He sends people their jobs, where they're to go and whatever, but he won't communicate with a member of the public. But he communicates with everybody else apart from myself. So when people don't want to deal with myself, I foresee, but that's quite intimidating, that is, towards myself.
Why do you think that is? Why don't you think that? Why don't the top people in these organisations want to answer your questions? Why?
Because I've done my job.
I'll tell you why.
I've done my job.
Because you see this, this is years and years and years of every single bit of information there's ever happened to this man. Every police interview, every council session, every single thing has been documented and put in the right order by you. And the reason they don't want to talk to you is because they're not what they normally get. A family that don't know anything can happen, don't ask the right questions. When you are obviously asking the right questions.
Perpetrators have got hold of her.
Because they still live in this area, so let's get this right. You know, we're talking about 70 men. One or two went to court. One of them everything got thrown out from cocaine. The other guy, the Sikh guy, he was in prison. But all the rest of these men are still living.
They're still living.
And living and working in these places. What I've told from, I've met many families that say exactly the same thing. They're all saying exactly what you're saying. And there's all these men still live around here. They're walking around like they're the kings of this area because they're untouchable. They've been called the untouchables. I've heard that. Because they're not being dealt with. And people like your daughter, to walk to school, to walk to the shop, to walk to the cinema, to walk to the friend's house, there's a big chance she's going to see one of these guys.
Well, what happened was, for instance, Balraj Singh. She absconded to London, Amy did, and after 2 years I got her back. I got a house, and the house was gutted.
So you managed to convince her to come back?
I convinced her to come back.
Okay.
The house was gutted. It was basically... The deal, what was done was, I did the work, all the maintenance work of the house to get the house to a livable standard, and there'd be no rent, first month's rent, and she'd have to pay no deposit. So, I thought, okay, that's a good deal. They supply the material, I do the work. So I did it. I had it all ready for the 23rd of December. 23rd of December 2017. I had it ready for. And she bumped into a perpetrator. I got her here a week before that. And it was the 22nd of December 2017. She bumped into the perpetrator in the shop. As she was going in, he's coming out.
Did he say anything to her?
him and his brother, well, she'd already been threatened by the brother. If his brother went to prison, she'd be next.
If you talk and he goes to prison, we're coming for you.
Yeah.
They used to say that to her.
Yeah.
To Amy.
Yeah. So that had already happened. He'd been to prison, and she bumped into him, Balraj Singh, and his brother Brahinder in the doorway. Well, she just come back, collected her stuff, got her kids, left.
So again, if the police would have dealt with this from the beginning, well, that situation might not have happened, because it wouldn't have.
No,
because
but the parole board, they had a duty of care to do there. A parole board, 6 weeks prior to that perpetrator being released, she is to be notified, but he's going to be released, and which area he's getting released into.
Was she notified?
She was not notified. The police didn't even notify her. The only time the police come out was to give her a letter to get her to sign over the fetus for destruction.
That's all they were interested in.
That's all they were interested in. Other than that, they weren't interested. And still to this day, in January, 17th of January 2019, I get a letter from a Detective John Marsden, the Major Crimes Investigation Unit. And he's telling me, by the letter what he's wrote, he owns Amy's case. He owns it. He owns nothing. Has he paid for it? Has he bought it? If he owns it, he's bought it. You don't own nothing. It's not owned by you. The case is owned by Amy, and it is owned by ourselves. He owns nothing. And when you can turn around and say you can't retry somebody for double jeopardy was demolished in 2012. So,
are we talking about the guy that was done with the cocaine and the penetration of your daughter?
Yeah.
But double jeopardy would mean the same offence, but it's not the same offence.
It's not the same offence.
So
but regardless, double jeopardy doesn't stand for rape. No. You can retry on rape. You can retry on penetration of a minor. You can retry for murder.
But he told you not.
He told me I can't. And he sends me an annex.
This is this year.
And this is this year. This is Detective John.
So you're all aware that my involvement with Telford, that I've been involved now with the families and the charity in Telford for 7 months. I've tried to do as much as I physically can to assist Tommy in helping him to come together with information on how a documentary can expose those individuals, including the police forces and the social services that have failed miserably in Telford. Families living in fear, families having to move, families being murdered for opening up and doing the job that the police and the establishment refuse to do. About a week ago, I was made aware of a threat to a family. The threat was credible. The threat was that certain individuals, perpetrators, child rapists, child abusers, were trying to obtain the information from a father that would potentially send them to prison. The police refuse to work with this family, refuse to look at the information and the credible evidence that he has on these families, and he has driven himself mad. He has to have counselling because of this. He feels completely helpless, and it's now come to a point where the credible threat is such a threat that he believes, and so do we, and so does many others, that it is now too dangerous for him and his family to stay in Telford. I rang the police. I made them aware of these threats. The police said they were aware. They were so aware that these threats were credible that they gave the family a type of Osman warning that you've all seen that I put out last night, telling the family there is a real threat that individuals with guns will come to the house and they will attempt to obtain this information from them. They refuse to move the family. They refuse to work with them. They refuse to safeguard them. I have been on the phone till 2 o'clock in the morning, speaking to police, begging them to go and help this family, begging them to give them the security that they desperately need. To a point where, you know, the charity and the Sikh Awareness Society have gone round and installed complete CCTV systems and alarm systems. But even after that was installed, the threat still came. And it was very obvious that the father felt like the threats were directed directly at him. He took that so seriously, which he rightly should, that he actually left Telford to protect his family. He believed if he wasn't there, that the threats would die down. No. They're now threatening to murder his wife and his 3 children. The information has been passed to the police. The police refuse to help them. The police refuse to move them. I had a call at 1:30 in the morning by a police officer from Telford. And I can only describe this phone call as one of the most daunting phone calls I think I've ever experienced in my life. This police officer, the only way I could describe it is he was taking the piss. He was asking me, well, what's the threat? Who's threatening who? Why are you calling the police, Danny? Why are you naming these people? Why are you saying these things? I'm saying these things because they're a legitimate threat to this family. What are you talking about, Danny? Why are you doing this? Why don't you just leave it alone? You're causing problems. I'm causing problems. I'm trying to safeguard a family from the threat of murder. And you refuse to go around and help this family. This police officer is actually involved in the case, or cases. I experienced in that phone call what that father has been experiencing for 7 years. The disrespect, the lies that they have told. We are now taking steps to remove the family from Telford into a safe house. We have no option but to take this upon ourselves to do what the police refuse to do. The father has had to leave his family to try and somehow safeguard them by not being there. These threats are now being directed at the mother and her children. She isn't sleeping. The children can't sleep. They're crying. They're begging for help. And no one will help them. So me and Tommy are putting steps in place to remove the family from Telford. And once the court case is over, we as a movement need to come together to help this family. When I made a video 7 months ago and I told you I was going to go to Telford, I asked you, and I said, please, when we come to a point where we as a movement need to help these families, then we have to take those steps. And it's very close to us being at a point where we have to take those steps. We will remove the family from Telford. We will put them in a safe house. But we ask you, when we come to you for help, that you will help us to get this family the new life they so desperately deserve. I'm in close contact with the victim herself, who is now 22, I believe. She is so concerned for the safety of her mother and her siblings and her father that she's begging me to do this. We need to come together to help this family. We are going to put steps in place to remove the family, but that'll be the first steps. The next steps is to make sure that family have a new location to go to and a new life to live. They cannot live in this anymore. The father has had to deal with this for so long that it is driving him insane. There are previous arson attacks on this home. There are armed men with bats coming to the house, threatening the family. The police caught them red-handed. They refuse to do anything. It is clear that the police are more interested in covering their asses than they are in protecting these vulnerable families. We will expose these police officers when the time is right. We will expose those services that are there to protect these families that are not doing that. We will expose them for what they are. And I say this to anyone that criticises what I do in Telford. Where are you? If no one else is willing to do what we do, why shouldn't we do it? If we are what you say we are, then why are you not there trying to take this? Why are you not there trying to help the family? How can you criticise someone or people that are trying their hardest to make a difference for these families? I will do everything I can to help these families, and you can call me and the movement whatever you want, but it's us at the end of the day that are sitting with these families. It is us at the end of the day that are having sleepless nights contemplating what we've heard. It's us that are trying to make a difference. So I ask every single one of you, when the time comes, please help us give this family a new life. Thank you.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name's Amy and I'm here today to protect my family. I want to let you people know what all these corrupt people have done to me, my family, and they're still doing today. The social services involved in the case when I was 11 to the age of 14, they didn't even have any training until last year. All these people, I did interviews, hours on end, and these people are still walking around today, heads held high, threatening my family with firearms. I mean, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And I'm here today because I'm a strong survivor. And I believe I'm here today to fight for my family. No matter how many people come to my house and torture my family, we all stand strong, and we will stand strong until we get justice. My father recently has moved out of the family home to try and protect the family. People have made the threats come 10 times worse. My family have contacted police, they don't come out. 5.5 hours for a firearm. I was lying in my bed at 2:20 in the morning, and 15 police officers come to my house, busting my door when they could have been going to my family's house. 15 people for firearms coming to my house for no reason, saying that they had a phone call that I was trapped in a house and I was going to kill myself. But they send 15 officers to my house, and something so serious with firearms and things like that, they don't take it seriously. They offer my mom an asthma warning, but they don't offer to move them out of the area. It is disgusting, vile. Police officers in Telford have been handed envelopes full of money for evidence to be dropped. Well, I am not allowing it any longer. These people will come to justice. Asian men are still walking around the Telford area grooming young vulnerable girls like myself. Even 12 years old, I went and I seen a girl in a freezer, dead, and they tell me if I spoke out that would happen to me. And this is why I'm a strong survivor today with my own family. I want justice. I want justice. These people will not intimidate my family much longer. I will get justice even if I have to do it with my own bare hands. I'm sick of it. I am sick to death of it. 4 years of my life was torn by these disgusting, they're not even humans. They are monsters. These people are monsters. All of them are connected. Every last one of them. Let me tell you something. In 2013, on the 30th of September, I went for an abortion and they offered me £15,000 to keep a baby off a fucking monster. Sorry for swearing, but this is how I feel. This is how I feel, and today I've been given the chance to stand here and discuss about these monsters. These monsters. Social workers, they put behaviour contracts in place. They never stuck to it. My family were told to lock me in rooms to keep me safe. They would take me upstairs, flats that I'd never known. Well, I hope everybody in Telford and the people here today see this, and other people come forward. We was never allowed to talk to each other, never. We said hello and goodbye. Well, I tell you now, this might have messed up my family mentally, but we will emotionally come through this. We are stronger than these people think, and we will pull together as one. My dad spoke to Danny, in a video, and it's all broadcasted on YouTube, and he can tell you in more detail than I can because I'm very emotional. But if you watch that video, you will see it, that it's emotionally and mentally drained the family. It has torn our family apart now, to the extent that my family are split. My family are split. My dad's gone, my mom and my brothers are there, my sister and her little boy. We need help get them out in the best possible way possible. These people have now gone searching places. Only yesterday, 10 people went searching for my uncle in a place that he goes the most. And luckily, he wasn't there. He wasn't there, but his friend was. And this makes me think that they're coming sooner than we think. So, in the next couple of days, these people will come to justice, and it will come to light that we will not give up. We will not give up, and we will fight until these people are brought to justice, whether it's with Danny. Danny's tried his best. I've been sat on the phone at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, stressing about my family. I can't sleep at night because I'm not with them. I try my best. I call Danny 100 times a day, you know, and there's nothing anyone can do anymore. But our Telford police are corrupt. Social workers are corrupt. A 12-week program took 44 weeks to complete. These people, social workers, they were supposed to protect me to safety. My partner, they didn't know at the time, and they let me abscond to London when I was 16. No one knew this guy, they'd never met him before, and they let me go to London when I was 16. All they said to me was, call us on the other end. These social workers, police, caseworkers of Telford are corrupt.